With us, so I'm going to kick off. Welcome everyone to the Sustainable Builders Alliance 27th webinar, What Makes a Building Material Healthy? My name is Hamish. I'm one of the founding members of Sustainable Builders Alliance and the director of Sanctum Homes, and I'll be your host for this evening. In the spirit of reconciliation, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Today we are joined by building biologist Zara D'Cotta. Zara D'Cotta, founder of the Healthy Home Building Biology New Build Consultant and Keynote Speaker, discovered her passion for environmental health after going through cancer and environmental illness. These experiences led her to the realisation that her homes are inadvertently contributing to many illness and ailments we see today. Specialising in healthy building materials and healthy home design, she is on a mission to empower building industry professionals with the knowledge and tools they need to guide clients towards choices that are better for their health and environment. A graduate of the Building Biology Institute of the USA, Zara's commitment to this emerging field is unparalleled. After beginning her studies in Australia in 2020, her desire for deeper knowledge led her to 2 years of further study under the mentorship of pioneers in the building biology new build space in the US and Canada. She has delivered presentations and keynotes for the Australian Institute of Architects, Association of Professional Builders, Building Designers Association of Australia, Surfers for Climate, and National Breast Cancer Foundation. She has been interviewed by good friends of ours, Undercover Architect, Amelia Lee, Level Up with Duayne Pearce, Professional Builder Secrets, 10 News, The Project Today, and been featured in Duayne and Herald Sun. At the heart of Zara's endeavours is a clear and compelling vision, a world in which every home is designed and constructed with health in mind, using materials that will enable us to thrive while minimising our impact on the environment. In today's webinar, Zara will explore what really makes building materials healthy and the pivotal role that building materials play in providing health and wellbeing benefits for people and the environment. Zara will discuss the healthy building material criteria, evaluating the health and environmental impacts of building materials, material choices and mould risk, and explore the attributes that can contribute to or avoid condensation and mould. She will also discuss how 3 prevalent building materials fare when rated through the lens of building biology. Today's webinar is brought to you by one of our platinum founding sponsors, Live Life Build. Live Life Build is co-founded by builder Duayne Pearce and architect Amelia Lee. They help and teach custom residential builders how to improve their projects, businesses and lives. They do this via their blog, online courses and group mastermind. Duayne and Amelia are on a mission to elevate the professionalism of the residential construction industry and help everyone enjoy building and renovating. For more information on how you can join this amazing network of builders, check out www.livelifebuild.com, at live.life.build on Instagram. You can send them an email at hello@livelifebuild.com. And if you don't already listen to their podcast, you need to check out the Undercover Architect and Level Up. Now, I've been doing Live Life Build for the past 18 months. And if nothing else, the community is incredible, but the information they share other residential builders on improving their businesses and life is incredible. So if you are a builder out there and you want to improve your business, definitely get in touch with them. Now, the information you're about to receive is based on the experience of the presenters and may not relate to you or your situation. If you'd like more specific advice, please get in touch with us via email. Now, today's webinar will be around the 30-minute mark, and we're going to have plenty of time for discussion to answer questions. I definitely encourage everybody to pop any questions they may have in the chat box down the bottom, and Zara and I will have a good conversation afterwards. I'm sure there's going to be so much amazing information that's going to come out of this, and there's going to be heaps of questions. Now, Zara, over to you.
Thank you, Hamish, for that very warm introduction. And it really is an honour to have the opportunity to present the Sustainable Builders Alliance this evening, because each of you, driven by your passion and your commitment, really is at the forefront of much needed change in the Australian building industry. And the dedication that I have witnessed from both you as individuals in this group and also collectively is nothing short of inspiring. And there was a noticeable synchronicity that struck when Hamish invited me to do this presentation, and shared that it was in 2020 during lockdowns that this organisation was founded, because it was that very same year that I'd commenced my studies in building biology, and it was during those lockdowns that I was immersed in the beginnings of my research on building materials, which I'll be sharing today. And while this community has been championing energy efficiency, sustainability, and innovative building practices, my own experiences have led me to advocate for health in the built environment. So when Hamish asked me to share insights on what I believe is the next frontier in the building industry, health, I was both thrilled and also really hopeful, because I see this as an incredible opportunity for our parallel paths to converge towards a common goal. And that together with our diverse range of experiences and insights and passion and commitment, I feel really confident that we can shape a future where every home is built with health and our environment in mind.
Amazing, amazing, awesome. I'm going to throw it over to you, Zara. I'm going to stop my video, and I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you so much. I also want to extend my gratitude to Duayne and Amelia and Live Life Build for sponsoring today's presentation, because something that I have realised over the last couple of years of working with builders, that it really is, having business acumen and the commitment to healthier, more environmentally friendly building practices is, I think, really critical to driving transformation and change within the building industry. And it's why the work that Duayne and Amelia are doing, both as individuals and Live Life Build, is just so critical, and that, why I really admire them both, and I'm really grateful for their support today. So to elaborate a bit more on Hamish's introduction to who I am, I want to share a little bit more about what led me to being here presenting to you today. So my life changed in quite a profound way 10 years ago, just before my 30th birthday, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that inspired a heap of lifestyle changes, the departure from my corporate career. And I felt pretty confident that that would be the biggest challenge that I'd have to overcome for a while, until 2 years to the day later, when I received a second diagnosis that I had a melanoma in my leg. Now, I was incredibly lucky in that neither of my cancers had spread, but a month after that second diagnosis, I lost a very dear lifelong friend to cancer, to breast cancer. And that, was obviously rocked my world in an even bigger way, and led me to asking lots of questions. And it was also around that time, I was very fortunate in that I hadn't been sick through my cancer experiences, because I hadn't had to go through chemo, but I had been through 6 weeks of radiotherapy, surgeries, and been on a medication that had quite a debilitating impact on my body. And in those following months, I had more than 20 symptoms that no doctor could explain. And I was really fortunate to see an environmentally aware health practitioner that did the most comprehensive health history that anyone had ever done, that included asking me about the buildings that I'd lived in throughout my life and symptoms that I'd experienced in those buildings. And we connected the dots, and I'm one of the 1 in 4 people that's genetically susceptible to mold. And although I probably always had a degree of sensitivity, the experiences and the stress that I've been through put me on the extreme end of the scale. And I was advised that I should engage the services of a building biologist anytime that I want to move house for the rest of my life. I was quite skeptical about that, but my experiences in the years that followed proved that advice to be very wise. So I left the home that I owned in Melbourne, and I spent the next 4 years trying to find a home to live in that wasn't water damaged. I couldn't even tell you how many homes that I lived or stayed in that 4 years between Melbourne and Sydney. before eventually settling here in the home that I'm in now in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales in 2019, and deciding that moving into a newly built home was going to be key to getting my health back on track. But the trade-off that I paid for a home that wasn't water damaged was the building materials. This home had been finished 3 weeks prior. The builder had handed over the keys, and I woke up after that first night with eyes stinging so intensely that I had to leave the house while I let fresh air in. I had a really bad skin rash for the first few months, and I had some bouts of nausea. And this was my breaking point, and the point at which I decided I needed to learn about the materials that had been used to build my home. And when I began studying building biology, and one of my first assignments was I had to research the known health and environmental impacts of every single ingredient in every single material used to build my home. And I was at this desk for 3 weeks full time. I was absolutely staggered at the mountains of evidence, and I hoped that there might one day be some people who actually build and design homes that might be willing to share the information that I have to share. And my mission initially was to help homeowners, but it very quickly evolved, and it's now actually building industry professionals and predominantly builders that make up the majority of my client base, and that have become my greatest teachers and allies and friends in this incredible movement for change, which is exactly why I'm so excited to be here today. So in terms of what I'm going to be covering, I'm going to introduce you to what building biology is, and then I'll take you through the criteria that I use to assess building materials and some additional considerations that I think that are helpful to determine mold susceptibility. And then I'll share with you how I've rated 3 commonly used materials. And then we're obviously going to be scratching the surface of some really big topics. So if what I share resonates and you feel called to take your knowledge to the next level, I'll share how you can do that. And then, as Hamish mentioned, we will have time for a Q&A. So building biology is derived from the German words Baubiologie, and it literally means building for life. And it was founded in Germany in the 1970s. So following World War II, came the need to build a lot of new homes really quickly, the move to faster, untested methods of construction and synthetic building materials. And it was around this time that there was a group of professionals that noticed a significant decline in the health of the population. And so building biology was founded by Alfred Hornig, PhD, and electrode biologist, and Anton Schneider, PhD, and electrode biologist Alfred Hornig. And you can think of it as a bridge that connects the construction world to the well-being of the people who inhabit the structures. And it is the study of the relationship between the built environment and the health of the human and our surrounding environment. And the goal is for each of these 3 things to be in harmony. And I personally think that human health has felt a bit like the forgotten cousin in new builds until recently. And it's why this acknowledgement in the National Construction Code that mold is a hazard to human health is so monumental, but really is just scratching the surface in terms of the many complex ways the built environment can impact a person's health. So this is from the Australian Building Code's Condensation in Buildings Handbook. And so, as I know that you're well aware, in your role as builders, you will be required to discern whether the specified materials could contribute to condensation and mold issues. And while there is a significant emphasis on mold prevention, it's equally paramount to make sure that these materials won't inadvertently lead to other health consequences for your clients. So the 9 criteria that I'm about to take you through, so I learned 2 slightly different systems in Australia and the US. So this is a variation of those 2 systems on what makes them both the most sense to me. And as well as these criteria, there are 25 guiding principles of building biology. And for each of the criteria I'm going to mention, I will list on the slide the correlating principles of building biology. Now, if this is something that you want to be able to refer back to after the call, there's no need to jot these down because I will share a resource at the end in which I'll send you a PDF of the 9 criteria and the 25 building biology principles. So the first criteria is pretty straightforward, and it is the material naturally occurring, and nature really is considered the golden yardstick in building biology. And If the material is processed or synthetic, then you need to consider to what degree is it processed. And the second one that I know that you're already well onto and considering is the ecological impact. So considering the entire life cycle from cradle to cradle, embodied energy, if it is a natural material, how long does it take to grow? Are pesticides required to grow it? What happens at the end of its useful life? Can it be recycled? Is it biodegradable? And if it goes into landfill, will it leach toxic chemicals into the environment? And then another one I know you're already really well onto is energy consumption and also thermal properties. So as well as considering, heat storage capacity and surface temperature, how thermally conductive a material it is key to reducing condensation and mold risk. And the irony is that materials, some materials being chosen for their thermal properties actually emit really high levels of CO2, as you can see here for polystyrene. And not only that, for every kilogram of polystyrene, there's a significant amount of water waste and also associated chemical, plastic, and paper waste. And there's the human health impacts and impacts on wildlife to consider as well. So styrene is a group 2A probable carcinogen to humans, and there is evidence of its carcinogenicity to animals. And you might be thinking, well, if it's under a slab, then, why does it really matter? So I had someone recently sent me an image of lots of polystyrene on the side of the road near building sites in Tasmania. And the styrene does get transported as a vapor in the air and water, and it contaminates soils. It also breaks down into microplastics and nanoplastics and causes harm to marine life, and also ultimately makes its way into our food system and our drinking water and ultimately our bodies. The fifth consideration, and this is a big one in the context of new builds, is off-gassing. So building materials, carpets, paints, finishes can off-gas for weeks, months to years after a new home has been built. And I can recall so vividly, there's been 2 occasions where I've walked into homes that have recently been finished being renovated or close to. And the first thing that I noticed when I walked into those homes was not the aesthetics. The first thing, I actually stopped in the doorway because the first thing I noticed was that there was no new home smell. And in building biology, that's exactly how we want a new home to smell. It should be neutral and pleasant smelling. And these are some examples of toxic vapors that can off-gas from building materials. So there's VOCs, semi-VOCs, there could be microbial volatile organic compounds, heavy metals, and also radon gas. And radon gas, materials sourced from the earth can potentially have radon gas. And granite is an example of a material that has been found to have quite high levels of radon gas depending on where it's sourced. So while how natural a material is a really important consideration, natural doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. And radon gas is the second leading cause of lung cancer globally and the leading cause of cancer in non-smokers. And something else that's important to bear in mind is that, these chemicals that are off-gassing in our indoor environment aren't just floating around harmlessly. We not only inhale them, but they get absorbed through our skin, our eyes, they make their way into our bloodstream and our organs. And I really think that building material should be, the ingredients list should be worthy of as much scrutiny as food products. And the other thing is that, just because a building is green doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. And there was a study by the CSIRO that found the highest levels of VOCs in a green building. And they said that greater attention to VOCs is needed. And the other important thing to be, in terms of understanding the, potential impacts for people living within the home, this was a story at the end of 2019 in the South China Morning Post, and 70% of children in the children's oncology ward at this hospital came from homes that had recently been renovated. And the doctors suspect that formaldehyde in building materials and furniture is a cause of rising admissions in children with blood cancers. And these children will require years of treatment, and tragically only 70% of them will make a full recovery. And this is heartbreaking on so many levels, but what makes it so tragic is it's entirely preventable just by being informed. And I really believe that we have the knowledge and we have the power and the responsibility to guide families towards choices that can prevent such devastating outcomes. So when looking for healthier products, there's a lot of products now being labeled as low VOC and zero VOC, but these can and quite often are misleading because the VOCs of known risk are often being replaced by semi-volatile organic compounds of unknown risk. And I have seen a number of examples of this. One of them was a paint product that was labeled low VOC, and it carried a label on it that would suggest that it would be a better, safe choice for children with allergies or asthma, but it actually contained triclosan, which is also referred to as microbound and biofresh, which, in addition to being a hormone disruptor and harmful to the immune system, actually contributes to allergies and asthma. So if you're wondering what semi-VOCs are, they have a higher boiling point than VOCs. So they take longer to release, they're heavier, they persist in the environment for longer, and they are more difficult to measure. And they attach to indoor surfaces and dust, and they're present in the air as well. So there are a number of lists and classifications like the red list. So these can be a really helpful guide. So the red list as of 2023 has more than 11,000 chemicals that are listed, which include semi-VOCs, and this list is updated annually. However, there are more than 100,000 chemicals in commercial use, according to the Australian government. And the US EPA estimates that less than 1% of chemicals in commercial use have been rigorously tested for human safety. So labelling schemes, yes, they provide really helpful guidance, but they're not a substitute for full transparency. And this is where I think this community has a really important role to play, because I feel like I'm banging my head on a brick wall sometimes with the inquiries that I make to product manufacturers who refuse to share what's in their products. They often will say, "Well, tell us what chemicals that your clients might be sensitive to, and we'll tell you whether or not they're in those products," which just isn't good enough when knowing how many chemicals there are that they could possibly react to. So advocating for full disclosure, I think, is really important and needed. And also, if you know of manufacturers that are being transparent, then really do everything that you can to support those that are doing the right thing, to show that there really is a demand for this. And then this word, I always have a little bit of a giggle now when I say, because hygroscophicity, there's been a number of builders that have been through my mastermind that have come to calls and told me very proudly that they're now using this word on building sites with their teams. So a material that is hygroscopic will help regulate humidity. So it will absorb moisture when humidity is high, and it will release it again when humidity is low. And timber is an example of a material that has incredibly high hygric buffer capacity. And then there's diffusion and absorption properties. So diffusion is also referred to as a vapor permeability, and then there's absorption properties as well. And in building biology, our home is considered our third skin, with our clothes being our second, our home being our third. And our home, just as we need to be able to sweat through our skin, our homes need to be able to do that as well. So we want water vapor that is inside the home to be able to escape without condensing in the walls, which is why the changes to the National Construction Code are so brilliant. And this is an important consideration regardless of what climate you're in, because as human beings, we contribute to moisture levels in the home by breathing, sweating, showering, cooking. So important in any climate. And so a material that has effective absorption characteristics like timber can absorb toxic chemicals from the air and also absorb sound and echo. Something to bear in mind, though, is that these materials, even if they've got really good absorption and diffusion properties, they do have a saturation point. So source control, so minimizing indoor pollutants and good ventilation should be the priority. And this 8th one is I feel like I'm just cracking open like a very big can of worms and a big topic for another day. But A consideration in the context of building materials is, will it impact the electroclimate of the home? So in building biology, we want to reduce exposure to electromagnetic fields as much as possible. And some building materials can conduct electricity and can either be beneficial or detrimental in terms of trying to reduce exposure levels as much as possible. And the other consideration as far as this set of criteria and the materials is that synthetic materials can deplete indoor air of beneficial negative ions, which are abundant in nature, and can also contribute to static electricity. So another reason that having natural materials can be so beneficial. And then a rating is given to the overall health impacts of the material. So these are some additional things that I like to consider to determine mold susceptibility. So will it attract dust? Because dust is a food source for mold. And is it easy to clean? So if you have a textured surface that is difficult to clean, it's going to be more difficult to clean the dust and more difficult to get rid of potential mold. And then what is the drying potential of the material if it gets wet? So if there is a water leak or any flooding, will it be able to dry out before mold becomes a problem? Or is it a material that's going to need to be ripped out and replaced, which is also an important consideration from an environmental point of view. And then how processed is a material? Because the more processed it is, the more of an ideal food source it is for mold. So let's look at how I rated 3 commonly used building materials, starting with timber framing. So timber has some incredible advantages, and particularly in relation to how it responds to moisture in the built environment. So it is vapor permeable and hygroscopic, and it can hold up to 16% of wood moisture content before mold becomes a problem. It also comes with significant disadvantages, as it is susceptible to rotting, condensation and mold, and moisture levels above 16% can be a problem and will likely result in surface mold. It may also be contaminated already when it comes to site, and it's often can be treated with toxic chemicals. It's also being harvested at an unsustainable rate. And then there's steel framing. I've found this particular material so fascinating to assess, and really had to get my conclusions kind of evolved quite significantly the more into my studies that I got. And at a surface level, without taking principles of building biology or building science into consideration, it's a material that does have a lot of benefits, as you can see here. But it also comes with some significant disadvantages. So it is highly thermally conductive, as I know you are probably aware, and can pose condensation risk. It is a finite resource. It also it does conduct electricity, so it will carry electrical currents around the building and could, depending on how it's used, exacerbate electromagnetic radiation within the home. The other thing to consider is that if there is a water leak in the home and the homeowner wants to use a moisture meter to try and detect whether there is a leak, metal will give false high readings. So the moisture will give a reading of 99%. So it can be hard for them to determine if there is a leak without having to get someone in to do an assessment with thermal imaging. It also doesn't have any high grit buffer capacity, and it's not vapor permeable. And this data by Joseph Stubrick of the Building Science Corporation in the US, I found so fascinating to look at the difference in the high grit buffer capacity between steel frames with plasterboard and wood frame, and then a masonry wall. So steel frame with plasterboard can hold 19 litres before mold becomes a problem. And then if it's wood frame, 189, and then masonry wall, 1,892, which is just massive compared to 19 litres. And then PVC, so it's got good thermal properties and it's durable and it's long lasting, but it is toxic and hazardous at every single stage of its life cycle. It contains a number of really toxic and harmful ingredients to human health and our environment. Also releases harmful ingredients into the air when it's produced and when it's incinerated. It can off gas when it becomes hot. It leaches into household water and into soil. And vinyl chloride, which is in PVC, is a group 1 carcinogen to humans agent. It can also leach dioxin, which is widely recognized in scientific literature as the most potent carcinogen known to man. It's also a hormone disruptor linked to testicular and breast cancers, early onset puberty in girls, polycystic ovarian syndrome, diabetes, and heart disease. And then there's the social impacts of the material to consider. So 10% of the world's PVC is produced in China using forced labor. And in the PVC producing region of China, these plants are emitting 49 million tons of carbon each year and 9.3 tons of mercury. So mercury isn't in the product itself, but it is used in the production. And you may or may not have seen earlier in this year the train that derailed in the US, carrying vinyl chloride, which had a devastating impact on local wildlife that were found dead, and also on the people in the surrounding communities that experienced headaches and nausea. So having just been through all that, I know it's a lot to take in. There is rarely a black or white, perfectly healthy choice. And there's so often grey areas. I've spent so much time going around in circles, having debates with builders about trying, as humans, we want certainty, we want a yes or no, but there's rarely a perfect choice. And this is where having a set of criteria is really helpful. So for each of the criteria that I've just talked about, I rate them on a scale from 0 to 3. So 0 is like it's pretty bad and try and avoid it if you can. 3 is highly recommend. So for each of the criteria that I've just talked through, ecological impact and diffusion absorption and electrical properties are considered so important that you double the rating. So you can see here that untreated timber, the highest possible rating based on this method that I use is 39. The only reason I haven't given untreated timber a perfect score is because it is being harvested unsustainably. And then treated timber is 21, because not only because of the potential off-gassing, but also if it's treated, it does impact the hygroscopic and vapor permeability of the materials, as well as having an ecological impact. And then steel, like this is, it's not rated very well for a number of reasons, but that's not to say, like in the instance of a roof, for example, it's, it makes perfect sense. It's not to say if it's rating really badly, you shouldn't use it. And also this is not a perfect science. And, often I'm having to guess based on limited information from manufacturers, but it can be a really helpful guide, if clients are having trouble making choices. And then PVC, you can see there, has the lowest rating of these 3 materials. And yeah, the other thing is that so much of it also depends on the values and budget of the homeowner, but also where in the home is the material being used, what climate is in, what are the factors, what's the microclimate unique to the site, what are there, are there any nearby health hazards that need to be taken into consideration. And also, it is also very much about balance over perfection. I'm not here to say that every material used in a home build should be perfectly healthy. To try and do so is almost impossible, and I think can create quite a bit of stress, which is, I think, even more harmful than the toxic ingredients themselves. And so as we've explored these 9 criteria, I think it's really clear that the choices that are made in selecting materials go so far beyond aesthetics and in structural integrity and environmental considerations. They can also impact the quality of life and even the length of the life that is lived within the structure. And we have the knowledge and the tools to create homes that not only stand the test of time, but also nurture the well-being of the people living in the home. And I really think that you as builders and designers and influencers in this industry who are already driving change, you're already setting standards and creating structures that align with your core values. And then if health is something that, you feel called to explore or is a core value of yours and you feel called to explore this further, then this is a community of people in your industry that have taken part in the Healthy Building Materials Mastermind that I run. And I smile as I look at this because this was taken here in the Northern Rivers nearly a year ago, and this community has evolved quite a bit this year, but is still very much in its infancy. So they've most of the people in that picture, you may recognize some of them, have taken part in the 10-week Healthy Building Materials Mastermind that I run. And I've created this because I know how time poor you are, building industry professionals. I've done more than 1,500 hours of research, that I'm continuing to build on over the last 3.5 years. And my goal is to make it as easy and, for you to make decisions and have conversations with your clients around materials with as little as your time required. So I've distilled all my learnings into 1.5 to 2 hours of self-paced content each week. We have fortnightly live calls, and there's more than 70 materials covered. And we did have one of these groups starting today, which Hamish is part of. And if you are wanting to, if you feel like it's something that you want to explore before the end of the year, then we do have 2 spots available in that group. And I wasn't going to do another group before the end of the year, but I am still getting a lot of inquiries from people that don't want to wait till next year. So what I've decided to do is to have one more group start late October, and we'll cover the first 5 of the 10 weeks, and then we'll pause in December and January. So you get some time to digest and ruminate on what you've learned, and then we'll pick up again in February and March 2024. And for anyone that joins, for any of you here on today's session, I will donate 10% of that fee to the Sustainable Builders Alliance, because I really, as I said, I really admire the work that this community is doing and want to support it as much as I can. And if you want any further resources that I've mentioned today, so there is the 25 Principles of Building Biology as a PDF, the 9 building material rating criteria, and also Healthy Building Materials Mastermind information. If you're on your computer, you can scan that with your phone. If you're on your phone, then Hamish has a link to the landing page, which he is going to share with you. And then if we were in a room all together, I would really value the opportunity to have conversations with you one-on-one. But as that isn't possible, if you feel called to reach out to me afterwards, this is where you can find me online. I'm most active on Instagram. I've got a lot more healthy home information on there. And if you want to share any key takeaways or ask questions about the mastermind, send me a message and I can come back to you with a voice message. Oops.
Awesome, Zara. Thank you so much for that. Incredibly informative presentation. Just for everybody watching, I did just pop in the chat that link to the that information that Zara was just talking about then. And I know we touched on it today, Zara, when we were in the call, because it kind of came up that it is a lot to take in. And I know sometimes you can kind of feel paralyzed with not seeking perfection. And I think it's really important to realize that every little step that you take every day is making you better. So, and I take this approach in my business every day and in everything that I do. As long as I'm getting better at what I'm doing every single day, then I think if you can measure that over the year, you can certainly see how far you've come.
Yes.
So you jump in, yeah.
So I'm really glad that you've raised that again. Thank you, because I actually wanted to touch on that. So think of the body as like a rain barrel, and there's only so much toxicity that we can deal with before our body becomes overburdened. So we're really trying to reduce it wherever we can. We can't eliminate it. It's part of our lives, but reducing what we're putting into the rain barrel as much as we can.
Now, I've got a couple of questions here. Brian, one of the other directors, has been very active. He seems incredibly interested, and maybe we can get him to jump on to the 1 p.m. call since there's 2 spaces left. Brian says, and I'm not going to criticise intelligence because he's a very intelligent man, but he is asking, can you please explain what carcinogenic means?
Yep.
Just so we understand what that actually means to us people living in these buildings.
Great. I'm glad that you've asked that. So it means that it can, it comes with a cancer risk. It can contribute to cancer. So formaldehyde in building materials is a carcinogen, and, the doctors in China are linking that to the cancers in these children.
Another one from Brian. And if anyone else has got any other questions, please pop them in the chat, because we've got 15 or 20 minutes here, which I'm hoping to throw heaps of questions at Zara. We do have a bunch here to get through, but if you think of anything as we're going, please pop them in the chat. Out of your list of off-gassing materials, which is the most common and which is the most concerning?
I was really surprised about carpets and underlays, because there's the flame retardants, there's the dyes, there's the stain repellents, there's the formaldehyde, the polyurethane. I actually had someone share with me yesterday that when they'd specified a non-toxic underlay, but when it hadn't been used, and after each time they went to visit the home during the build, over a 3-day period, they felt I think she's nerve pain in her feet. So like it had a quite acute and immediate effect. So yeah, I think carpets and floor finishes and paints are the big ones. And the materials with a higher surface area as well, that I think are the priority to address.
This is just a thought bubble from me. Given this is such a, I guess a sort of a new kind of science, the building biology, do you think we're going to start to see other ailments kind of get linked to the effects that our buildings are having on people?
Yes. Yes. And I mean, building biology is, I think it's new in terms of awareness, but I have seen links between environmental factors and pretty much every known health condition.
So this is from Kendall. So Kendall is a regenerative design advisor for a global architecture firm,
I've heard of this.
and Perkins and Will, based in the US. Just moved to Australia a few months ago, and I'm still trying to learn what the landscape of resources look like here. In the States, we use mindful materials, Pharos, sustainable mines, Home Free /HBN, and Parsons Healthy Material Lab as a primary reference when we help teams choose materials. But what equivalent resources exist here, and are there any that you're pointing people to?
Good question. But first of all, I'm aware of Perkins and Will. There's a paper that I think they did on antimicrobials in building materials. So yeah, really at the forefront of all this stuff. So great to see that you're here. So as I mentioned, like there's the red list, there are lists that are helpful, but there's nothing that I'm aware of that is, it's why I've created the mastermind, because there isn't really anything like it that exists that takes all these criteria into consideration. There's a lot of resources for sustainable materials, but yeah, that's something that definitely is lacking.
This is from Elisa. Elisa is Director of Renew Design. I'm currently working on creating the Green Library, a library of certified sustainable building materials available to architects, designers, and builders starting in Brisbane this year. In terms of health materials, do you have manufacturers or suppliers that you can recommend?
Yes. So as part of the Healthy Building Materials Mastermind, I have all manufacturers and a supplier list. So the mastermind gives you the context, like the pros and cons of each of the materials, and then I also list suppliers. But I feel like the context, like people reach out to me and say, "Can I just have a list?" And the list without the context, I feel like you're not making those decisions and guiding clients from an informed place.
So Lisa, once that's been developed, I'd love you to keep in touch with Sustainable Builders Alliance, because it would be great. That'd be a great resource to share, and I'm sure Zara would love to look at it as well. It seems like an amazing thing that you're doing. Again, from Brian, the following are largely used materials in the industry at the moment. What is your opinion on CFC claddings, composite claddings, UPVC/plastic in particular, and PIR insulation in no particular order?
Okay, so CFC claddings. So we're talking about fibre cement.
Yeah.
UPVC plastic in particular. So fibre cement, there's obviously concerns from builders working with the product about silica, but from my own perspective, and this is where I've had a lot of debates about claddings with builders, and it so much comes down to personal experience. So like I know a lot of builders, the carpenters love timber, but for me, fiber cement, I'm in a home that has fiber cement, and for me, in terms of that's a material that I potentially would choose because of mold resistance. And then UPVC, so I don't know if this came before I'd gone through all the info on PVC, but yeah, PVC is one of the most urgent materials that we need to phase out for both from a health and environmental point of view. And then PIR, what's PIR insulation?
PIR is just another dense insulation that that has high R values for, of how thick it is. Look, it's another petroleum-based insulation product. Just on the UPVC thing, it's kind of making me squirm in my seat, given I have just installed 2 or 3 house lots of UPVC windows in our buildings. But it's all right. One change at a time, Zara.
And I really appreciate the challenges with that, because it is thermally, it does perform well, and it is more cost effective than the other options. So I really feel for the challenges you face as builders and designers.
This one is again from Brian, and he does preface it with, this is a pretty prickly question. What does a person do if they discover mold in their building? What is the course of action, and who do they speak with? Is there a systems and process for this when it eventuates?
Yeah, great question. So they should get a certified mold testing technician to come and assess their home. And you can find one locally on the Australian Society of Building Biologists website. And they will then carry out testing and advise what needs to be remediated. And then they should get a remediator who complies with the IICRC guidelines for remediation. So there are a lot of businesses out there claiming to be mold people and do mold remediations that actually aren't qualified to test or remediate mold. And the person that assesses the mold and remediates it should be 2 different people, because you then want the person that assesses to come back and see if what the remediation person has done has been effective.
This is from Nick. With off-gassing, if we're talking about formaldehyde, etc., what type of insulations would you recommend?
Yeah, so it's making inquiries to manufacturers on off-gassing against. This is where I'm often guessing, because they refuse to divulge. But sheep's wool that isn't treated, or wood fiber insulation would be.
It's a tricky one, because we sit here and we advocate like lots of insulation, well insulated homes, and then it's then we kind of look over here and look at building biology and think, well, hang on a minute, is this insulation that I'm actually putting in my home and in my wall that everyone's telling me I need to do, that's going to make my building nice and comfortable, but what's it actually doing to my health?
And
Nick, we actually did a webinar on clinker. It's a expanded clay aggregate insulation, which we're actually going to be using on one of our projects coming up. As Zara just said, wood fibre is another great product. We've also done a hempcrete home as well. And Zara, I'd love to know if you've heard any more murmurings of using mycelium as a insulative option. So neutralized fungus, essentially, because I have heard murmurings around the traps.
I did come across that a few years ago, and I was speaking to a friend who's been through mold illness about what we thought about that. And I think for me, it was probably not something I necessarily feel okay with, but someone tagged me in something recently. So to be honest, I'd need to look more into that.
Hemp's a great one. I know the picture that you ended on was either a field full of marijuana or was a field full of hemp. Either way, I thought it was an appropriate way to finish the webinar. But yeah, hemp's a fantastic one, and let's hope that with more and more interest in hemp, that it becomes more readily available and the cost comes down, because at the moment it is a bit of an expensive way to insulate your home. Simon has a question about Wi-Fi, and should we avoid this in our homes?
I love this question. So I personally have hardwired internet. If that's going a bit far for where you're at the moment, I completely respect that, but at least turn your Wi-Fi off at night, and avoid having your Wi-Fi router next to where you're spending lots of time during the day or at night. So not next to your computer and not next to your bed or children's beds.
I'm just replying to a message on the screen here. This is from Matt. When you talk about PVC, does this also refer to UPVC? And what is the difference between those two?
Oh my gosh, this came up on a call recently. And so UPVC is definitely the better of the two options. And at the top of my head, I have lots of notes that I've made that I would need to refer back to in order to be able to fully answer that. But if you want to, I'm happy to share with you after the call if you want to reach out to me.
Oh, I've just quickly Googled it. The distinction between them is whether they are coated in plasticizers. PVC has plasticizers, whereas UPVC does not.
Yeah, so, but they're still it's still PVC is PVC. It's still got all those other ingredients in it.
Right. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'll just get back to my chat screen. Oh, this is a great question, Zara. If you could remove any toxin from your home, what would it be?
Right now, I'd pull up the carpet.
Pull up the carpet.
Yeah, not just because of the toxicity, but impact on. I've had a number of clients that have had mold illness that have ripped up carpets and had an immediate improvement in symptoms, and also noticed a significant reduction in the amount of liquid being drawn into their dehumidifier.
One of the things that I've heard you talk about, I think on the Undercover Architect and on Duayne's podcast, was carpet going down on slabs that haven't had an appropriate time to dry, which I thought was really interesting, and makes a whole lot of sense because concrete continues to dry. And obviously it reaches a safe level. Have you got like a moisture content recommendation or a time for when we should be laying carpet in homes if we do choose to put carpet in our homes?
How long is a piece of string? I love that you've raised that because it is a big one, and I suspect that the vinyl flooring, I have vinyl flooring in the home I'm living in. I suspect that was laid over concrete that wasn't fully cured, so it's any flooring. And I did some research on this earlier in the year because of NCC 2022 updates, and no one that I've asked in the building industry seems to have been aware of this previously, but there is an Australian standard that requires the concrete to be testing before flooring is laid. And the standard requires that, saying that moisture testing with a meter with pins isn't sufficient, that you need to actually drill into the concrete and do a relative humidity test. And the humidity should be below, I think relative humidity was at 75 or 80%. So that's ideally what should be happening on projects. And then as far as like when would you lay the carpet, it depends like how thick is the slab. Like that's going to determine how long it will take to dry. But there is some guidance that you'll find in this week's module of the mastermind that I can't recall off the top of my head for how long it takes to dry out based on different thicknesses.
I think the risk is probably not with the custom builders like myself, where our projects are generally taking months, like 8 to 12 to 14 months to build, where we've got a building envelope which is reasonably protected from the elements reasonably early and has a long time to dry out. My concern would probably lay in those volume builders where they're actually rushing through and, laying carpet down and finishing homes within 16 weeks. And in my opinion, I don't think that is long enough for a concrete slab to dry out to then be laying floor coverings on.
And it also,
that's just my opinion though.
But also, apart from not wanting to put material over it before it's dried, and also cabinetry, it's contributing to elevated humidity levels above in the home. So you want humidity below 60%, and concrete can contribute to humidity levels above that in the first year or two that it takes to dry out. So if it hasn't been cured properly, then the homeowners should probably be taking some steps to dehumidify to bring those moisture levels under control.
This is a question from David, and he's wondering what the alternative to PVC sewer pipe would be. And he does say that the good news is there does appear to be a drainage alternatives. So do you know of any alternatives for PVC pipe for civils?
So polypropylene and polyethylene are considered safer plastics than PVC, but they're not widely available for residential use. They're more used on big commercial infrastructure projects. So that's something that, as a community, you could consider letting suppliers know that there might be a market for.
Awesome. This is from Anonymous. Do you think the current and future evolution of the basic requirements assist healthy homes, or does it make it more difficult?
I have to be really honest. I am so deep in the world of building biology and learning about building science that I don't feel like I know enough about basics to answer that question.
Maybe Jeremy, one of our directors, might be able to chime in. I might put that as a side note and see if we can get an answer for anonymous attendee. This is from Elena. Would making manufacturing process more sustainable be an option? Essentially, biodegradable products used in making buildings that are meant to last for generations may not be sustainable on the long term.
I think that would be a great place for manufacturers to try, and a great thing for them to aim towards.
I think there's there's definitely a shift towards more sustainably sourced renewable energy for manufacturing as it is now. We're all looking towards that as the way forward. I know some of my friends who own warehouses are obviously filling their whole roofs full of solar. This is from Simon, and I really hope that the answer is positive rather than negative. Is having dogs inside linked to human health in any positive or negative way?
Oh, look, they do contribute to pet dander that can get, go into your carpets, but you've got to weigh up the small potential issues versus the joy and love that they bring to our lives. And I don't have a dog myself, but I regularly look after. I'm second mum to my neighbour's dog, and I definitely intend to get my own dog.
And no matter what you said then, Zara, my dog will still sleep under the covers in my bed. I'll tell you that right now. There is nothing that would stop her from doing that.
Oh, she was.
What are your feelings on smart homes? So I think I'm really interested to hear your response to this.
I love this question. I think that when you consider the many known health impacts of wireless radiation, they are not very smart when you consider what those increased levels of radiation do to the human body. And in building biology, we are not advocates of smart technology. It's not to say that we should do away with wonders of technology, but having wired internet and you're not using the wireless side of things is something that we advocate for.
Now, one more question, and perfect timing because we're almost at 6 o'clock, so we might go a few minutes over. Are PVC downpipes, particularly in charge lines that are sitting directly in the sun, an issue leaching into the water when catching rainwater? That's a really great question.
So they would be, because, if it's heating up, then it would leach into the water. But also something else, we've talked about building materials. There are so many other considerations from a healthy home, but water filtration just should be standard. And there are, water filtration systems that will filter the plastics out. So finding the right water tank and piping materials can be hard, but knowing that it is then going to be filtered.
All right, Stephen has just quickly jumped in with a couple of questions. I'll get to one of them. Should we be concerned with installing battery systems? Are there any ways to shield the battery from the home, as they are generally hung on the side of the houses? And I'm going to be torn depending on how you answer this, because we're pushing to put batteries on all our homes.
I love this. So Stephen's currently going through the Healthy Building Materials Mastermind, and he's been going through everything with a fine-tooth comb. So I love that he is here learning tonight as well and putting questions forward. So yeah, so batteries can emit really high levels of EMF. So you want to make sure that they are not located near areas of prolonged exposure, so near beds or home office. And in terms of shielding, so there are 6 different types of EMFs, and the strategies for shielding each are different. And I would need to go back to, I'm just trying to think if you could actually shield that with metal, if it's, I
know we touched on this before we started, that EMF is like a whole other can of worms and a whole other webinar.
It'll be a big focus for me next year. I'm hoping to get to the US later in the year and do more training in this area. So I definitely will be sharing a lot more on this topic.
Well, maybe let's keep in touch, Zara, and maybe we can look at doing one next year, which kind of just really zones in on some of these other things. Now, I'm conscious of time, given that I am currently on annual leave and my wife and kids are back at our holiday house, family holiday house just down the road. Zara, thank you so much for coming on today. I've really enjoyed listening to you. You're incredibly passionate, and you can hear it come out in the way that you're presenting this information, that it's coming from, a really positive place. I'm really excited to learn more as I go through the mastermind course with you. Thank you so much, Zara. It's been fantastic having you on today. Another massive shout to our founding platinum sponsor and the sponsor for this webinar, Live Life Build. Please check out these guys if you are a residential builder who wants to improve your business. Zara, I will throw back to you in a second because I know I cut you off just then, so I will throw back to you. Please don't forget to listen to episode 21 of our podcast, The Sustainable Builders Yak, where Simon and Brian catch up with Yasha Nick Payam from Oronic Consulting Engineers, where they talk about engineering for high-performance homes. We actually have Oronic on a number of our projects, and they are amazing to deal with and have believe it or not, they're really sustainably focused engineers, and they always take like a timber first approach to designing our structures. You can check them out. You can check that webinar, that podcast out on Spotify or Apple. Our next webinar, we are going to be joined by scientist come building designer Jenny Edwards, and most likely some special guests, which we're just confirming at the moment, some local Canberra builders. This is going to be an awesome webinar. Jenny has done so much to the sustainable space in Canberra for a number of years. I think she's done over 150 odd homes, all electric, sustainable homes. I'm really excited to have Jenny on. An absolutely massive thank you to everybody who joined us last Thursday night for our rebrand from Builders Declare to Sustainable Builders Alliance, and the launch of our new website. It was a huge success. I was completely overwhelmed on the night. There had to have been 200 people there of like-minded individuals. And I just want to say, it's not just the 7 of us. Like, we are so much more than just the 7 founding directors of Sustainable Builders Alliance. We all play such a big part in pushing this industry to a more sustainable and healthy space. So if you haven't already, please jump on and join the Alliance. And I am going to do a little bit of a sales pitch here, because for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been running on the smell of an oily rag. We've been investing our own money and time into getting Sustainable Builders Alliance off the ground. It is time for us to sort of ask for some support through our peers in the industry. And you can still sponsor us. I think it's an absolute steal. I was pushing to make it higher. So if you jump on now, I think you're getting an incredibly good value. Gold sponsorship is a super low $1,000 and gets you featured as one of 3 sponsors on 2 podcast episodes, brand promotion on Sustainable Builders Alliance Instagram and Facebook page, and your logo actually gets a hyperlink on the new SBA website where we show all the people that have joined the Alliance. And you also get to align yourself with the good name, Sustainable Builders Alliance. The silver sponsorship is a steal at $500. Brand promotion on SBA, Insta and Facebook websites, logo and hyperlink to the new SBA website. And again, the good alignment. Zara, I'm just going to throw back to you quickly because I know that I cut you off before.
No, I just really want to say thank you, Hamish, and the Sustainable Builders Alliance. I really admire the work that you're doing, and it's great to hear you asking the community for support. And just thank you everyone for joining tonight's call. And I know what I've shared is a lot, but I've been watching this community and the individuals within it, and every single one of you gives me so much hope. And I've been saying to people recently, providing me with a really unexpected level of healing as well, to find healing through this work. When I have conversations with people like Hamish and those of you on the calls, that and I know that so many other people that have been through similar challenges that are watching what you're doing. They're not in the building industry, but health and the environment is important, and they're feeling really inspired and uplifted and hopeful by what you're doing. So yeah, well done for all the incredible work that you're already doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, again, it's not just me. I'm one of 7 directors. And I am going to give our website a plug. It's www.thesba.com.au. Jeremy Spencer from Positive Footprints has spent hundreds of hours on creating this content in this website. He is an absolute weapon and a machine. I definitely encourage you to go there. There is so much information there that is free for everybody out there to look at. We'd love your feedback. We're looking for some contributors to the website as well. So if you've got case studies or anything else you want on there, please reach out. I still think we're using the info@buildersdeclare.com email. I will let everybody know if that's wrong. You can join the conversation on our Facebook page, and you will notice that the Builders Declare Instagram page is now Sustainable Builders Alliance. I'm going to end it there, Zara. Thank you so much for coming along today, and thank you everybody for joining us. And I will put out some information on our next webinar over the next week or so.
Thank you so much, Hamish.
Zara, thank you. Cheers. Bye.